The war had ended. The sounds of battle had faded, leaving nothing but silence in its wake. Across the galaxy, the survivors of the great conflict struggled to rebuild. Many worlds lay in ruins, their once vibrant cities now rubble. The soldiers, tired and broken, returned home or scattered to the farthest corners of space. Jack, a human soldier, had fought through it all. He had seen too much, lost too much. But now, with the war behind him, he found himself with nothing but questions. The victory had been costly. Jack had lost his closest friends, and the galaxy had been forever changed. The peace was fragile, and the scars of the war ran deep. Jack, however, felt no joy in the victory. He had done his duty, fought for his people, but now, as the dust settled, he wondered what came next. One day, Jack received a mysterious message. It was a call to a distant world, one he had never visited. The message was from an old ally, a powerful alien lord who had fought alongside the humans during the war. The message was simple. You are to inherit my estate, including my servant. She is yours now. Jack had no idea what to make of it. He had never heard of this alien lord before, and the idea of inheriting a servantan alien slave seemed strange. The war had ended, and the galaxy was supposed to be rebuilding, not exchanging property. But the message had come with legal documents. The inheritance was official. Reluctantly, Jack set course for the distant planet where he was to meet his inheritance. As he arrived, he could see the desolation the war had left behind. The planet had once been a bustling hub of trade and culture, but now it was quiet and abandoned. He landed his ship and made his way to the estate. The estate was large but old. The halls were silent, with only the sound of Jack's footsteps echoing through the empty rooms. He could feel the weight of the place, the history of a fallen empire. As he entered the main hall, he was greeted by a figure, a woman. She was tall, with a graceful presence that stood out in the otherwise empty space. Her skin was a light shade of blue, and her eyes, though filled with sadness, were strikingly beautiful. She was Lena. Lena stood still, her posture perfect, as if she had been waiting for this moment for years. She wore a simple yet elegant outfit, one that seemed out of place in the rundown mansion. Her long hair flowed down her back like a waterfall of silver, and her features were delicate, almost otherworldly. But there was something in her eyes, something Jack couldn't place. It was a mix of fear and defiance. "I am Lena," she said, her voice soft, almost too soft for the grand hall they stood in. Jack didn't know what to say. This beautiful alien, standing before him, was now his responsibility. He was supposed to be her master, but something about the situation felt wrong. She wasn't just a servant, she was a person who had been through things Jack could only imagine. Jack cleared his throat and tried to put the awkwardness behind him. "I'm Jack," he said simply, not knowing how to address her, not knowing what to say next. There was a long silence between them before Lena spoke again. "I've been waiting for you," she said, her words carrying a weight of meaning Jack couldn't understand. "I belong to you now. You are my master." Jack felt uncomfortable with that word. Master. It didn't sit right with him. He had fought for freedom, for justice, for peace, and now he was supposed to own another being? It felt wrong. "Do you want to be here?" Jack asked, his voice more gentle than he intended. Lena's eyes softened, and for a moment Jack thought he saw a flicker of emotion in her gaze. But it was gone as quickly as it appeared. "I have no choice," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "I have never had a choice." Jack didn't know how to respond to that. He didn't know what to do with her or with this strange inheritance. He had been a soldier, used to following orders and fighting battles. But this ... this was different. There was no manual for this, no clear path. As the days passed, Jack tried to figure out what to do next. Couldn't just leave Lena alone. In this large, empty estate, she was a living being, not property. Slowly, he began to speak with her more, learning about her past and the pain she carried. Lena didn't speak much, but Jack could tell that beneath her quiet exterior, There was strength she had likely needed just to survive the life she had been forced into. And Jack, though he still didn't know what his role in this was, began to feel something shift inside him. This wasn't just about inheriting an alien servant. This was about understanding someone who had been through unspeakable things and perhaps finding a way to help her. Jack had no idea what the future would hold. But he knew that his life and Lena's had just begun a new chapter, one that neither of them could have imagined. The days passed in silence, and Jack couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. He had come to this planet to claim an inheritance, but instead, he found himself facing a moral dilemma. Lena, that alien woman he was now responsible for, remained distant and reserved. She moved through the estate like a ghost, her presence haunting the old halls but never truly part of them. Jack had done his best to make her feel comfortable. He had tried to talk to her, to get to know her, but every time he spoke, Lena only answered in brief, unemotional tones. It was as if she had learned to keep her feelings hidden, keep everyone at a distance. He had offered her food, asked if she needed anything, but she always seemed to turn away from him. She never asked for anything. There was a deep sadness in her eyes, a quiet acceptance of her fate. Jack couldn't understand it. How could anyone be so calm, so distant, after everything she had been through? One evening, as Jack was sitting in the main hall, reading through the documents his mysterious benefactor had left him, Lena entered the room. She moved slowly, almost hesitantly, as though she wasn't sure whether she should be there. Her eyes flicked to the ground, and she stood by the door, waiting for him to acknowledge her. Jack looked up, startled. "Lena, what is it?" She didn't answer at first. Instead, she simply stood there, her hands folded neatly in front of her. Jack could see the tension in her posture, the way she held herself back, as if she were afraid to speak. After a long silence, Lena finally spoke. "I need to clean the estate," she said quietly. "There are things that need to be done." Jack frowned. "You don't have to do that. It's not your job anymore." Lena's expression didn't change. "It is my duty," she replied, her voice flat. "I am a servant. That is what I was made to do." Jack's heart sank as he realized how deeply this belief was ingrained in her. She had been taught to serve, to obey without question. She didn't know any other way of life. "You're not a servant anymore," Jack said softly. "You're free." "But—" Lena only shook her head. "I don't know what freedom is," she whispered. "I have never known it." Jack stood up, walking over to her. He reached out, gently placing a hand on her shoulder. "You are free now, Lena. No one owns you anymore." Her eyes flicked to his hand, but she didn't pull away. "I don't know what to do with that," she said quietly, her voice barely audible. "I've always had someone to tell me what to do. Without them, I'm nothing." Jack felt a pang of sympathy. It was clear that Lena didn't see herself as a person, not really. She saw herself as an object, something to be used and discarded when no longer needed. And it made Jack furious, knowing that someone had treated her this way for so long. "You're not nothing," Jack said firmly. "You're a person just like me. You have a right to choose your life, Lena. No one can take that from you anymore." Lena didn't respond, but Jack could see a flicker of something in her eyes, a glimmer. Of hope, maybe, or doubt. He wasn't sure, but he wasn't going to give up on her. She deserved to have a life of her own, to experience freedom for the first time. The next few days were more of the same. Jack tried talking to Lena whenever he could, but she remained distant, her eyes often downcast. She rarely smiled, and when she did, it was fleeting, like a bird that appeared for just a moment before flying away. One morning, Jack decided to take a different approach. He had spent the past few days reading through the history of the estate and its former owners, and he had come across something that intrigued him. According to the documents, the alien lord who had left Lena to him had been part of a noble family, one that had been at the heart of the galaxy's political landscape for centuries. Jack knew that if he could uncover more about Lena's past, perhaps he could help her better understand who she really was. She had spent so long in captivity that she didn't even know her own worth. Jack couldn't stand the thought of her staying trapped in the shadows of her past forever. "Lena," he said one afternoon, after she finished cleaning the garden outside, "I found something in the records. I think you should see it. Lena paused, looking at him with caution. What is it? It's about your family, Jack said, holding out a datapad. The family you were born into. It's part of your legacy. Lena took the datapad from his hand, her fingers brushing against his briefly. For the first time, Jack saw her hesitate, as if she were afraid to look at what might be there. Slowly, she activated the device, and the screen lit up with ancient pictures of her ancestors, each one dressed in regal clothing, standing proud and tall in front of their vast, impressive estate. Lena stared at the screen, her face unreadable. She scrolled through the information, her eyes flicking over each image. Jack waited, his heart pounding as he wondered what she was thinking. Finally she spoke. This is who I was, she whispered, her voice trembling. I was once royalty. Yeah. Jack nodded, trying to put into words what he knew was true. Yes, Lena. You come from a powerful lineage. You were never meant to be a slave. You were meant to lead. Lena turned the datapad off and looked at Jack, her eyes wide. But I'm nothing now, she said quietly. I've lost everything. What am I supposed to do now? Jack took a deep breath. What you do now is up to you. You have a future, Lena, and I'm not going to let you waste it. For the first time since Jack had met her, he saw something spark in her eyes, a tiny flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, she was starting to believe it. As the days went by, Jack noticed a change in Lena. It wasn't immediate, but there was something different about the way she held herself. She wasn't as distant as before, and her eyes no longer looked at the ground when she spoke. She had begun to trust him, even if it was just a little. Jack didn't push her to open up. He simply let her come to him when she was ready. One morning, Jack was out working on the estate, repairing a broken fence. He had never been much of a handyman, but the work gave him something to do, something that kept his mind off the strange situation he found himself in. As he struggled with the tools, Lena appeared, standing by the garden gate. She was watching him from a distance, her face unreadable. Need help? She asked, her voice soft but clear. Jack glanced up, surprised. You want to help me fix this? Lena nodded. I can help, she said. I've done things like this before. Jack wasn't sure if she was just trying to be polite, but he handed her a tool anyway. All right then, let's see what you can do. They worked side by side for the rest of the morning. At first, there was an awkward silence between them, but slowly they started talking. Lena told Jack small details about her pastor, about the family she had once belonged to, the life she had lived before everything had been taken from her. She told him about her training, how she had been taught to be obedient, to serve without question. It was clear to Jack that her life had never been hers to control. But what surprised him most was the way she spoke about the world she had come from. Despite the pain in her voice, there was a longing there, a desire to reclaim something that had been lost. Jack could hear it in her words, the need to reconnect with who she had once been. And for the first time, he realized that Lena was not just a slave, she was a woman with a past, with dreams and hopes that had been crushed by the brutal forces of the galaxy. As they finished the work on the fence, Jack stepped back and looked at what they had done. It wasn't perfect, but it was better than it had been. He wiped his brow and smiled at Lena. Not bad, he said. Lena gave him a small smile in return. It was fleeting, but it was enough to make Jack's heart swell. No, he had never seen her smile like that before. It was a small moment, but it meant a lot. Later that evening, Jack and Lena shared a meal in the quiet dining room of the estate. For the first time, there was no awkwardness between them. They ate in silence at first, but Jack couldn't help but ask her questions, wanting to learn more about her, about the life she had lost. You mentioned before that you were trained for something, Jack said, breaking the silence. What exactly were you trained to do? Lena hesitated before answering, her gaze drifting down to her food. I was trained to serve, she said. To obey. Without question. I was taught to be silent, to never speak out of turn. I had no voice, no opinion. I was nothing more than an object, a possession. Jack felt a pang of anger in his chest. The thought of anyone being treated that way made him sick. That's wrong, he said, his voice low. No one should be treated like that. You're a person, not an object. Lena looked up at him, her eyes searching his face as though she was trying to understand him. "I never had a choice," she whispered. "I was never allowed to think for myself." Jack reached across the table, his hand gently touching hers. "But now you do," he said softly. "You're free. You don't have to live like that anymore." Lena's eyes filled with uncertainty. But there was something else there, too. A flicker of hope, maybe. She pulled her hand back, but she didn't look away. "I don't know what to do with this freedom," she admitted. "I've never had it before. I don't know what it feels like." Jack leaned back in his chair, thinking for a moment. "I can't tell you what it feels like to be free," he said. "But I can show you what it means to have a choice. You don't have to do anything you don't want to do. You can make your own decisions now." For a long time, Lena didn't speak. She simply looked at Jack, her eyes filled with a mixture of doubt and curiosity. Finally she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "What if I don't know how?" Jack smiled gently. "You'll learn. You have the rest of your life to figure it out. And you don't have to do it alone." Over the next few weeks, Jack and Lena spent more time together. They worked on the estate, fixing what had been broken by time and neglect. Lena slowly began to open up more, sharing stories of her homeworld, of the people she had once known, and of the life she had lost. Jack listened intently, learning more about the woman she had been before everything changed. With every passing day, Jack noticed a small change in Lena. She was becoming less distant, more comfortable in her own skin. She laughed at his jokes, even if they were corny, and she began to take more initiative in the things they did together. Jack could see that she was starting to feel something she hadn't felt in years: freedom. One evening, as they sat together, on the porch watching the sun set over the horizon, Lena spoke again. "Jack," she said softly, "thank you." Jack turned to her, surprised by the sincerity in her voice. "For what?" "For giving me the chance to be something more than what I was," she said. "For making me believe that I'm worth something." Jack smiled, his heart warm with a feeling he hadn't expected. "You were always worth something, Lena," he said. "You just had to realize it." Lena looked at him, her eyes shining in the fading light. "Maybe I'm starting to." The estate had become more than just a place of refuge. It was beginning to feel like a home. Jack and Lena had worked side by side for weeks now, and each day she seemed to grow a little stronger. Though she still had moments of uncertainty, there was a noticeable change in her. She no longer shied away from decisions or avoided speaking her mind. She was starting to believe in herself, and Jack couldn't help but feel proud of the progress she had made. One afternoon, while sorting through some old files left behind by her former owner, Jack found something that caught his attention. It was an old, worn-out datapad, its surface scratched and dusty, hidden beneath a stack of papers. Curiosity piqued. Jack powered it on. The screen flickered to life, revealing a set of encrypted files. Jack frowned. He didn't know much about encryption, but something told him these files were important. After a few moments of effort, Jack managed to unlock the datapad. The first document that appeared was an old letter, written in elegant, flowing script. It was addressed to Lena's former owner, the powerful alien lord who had left her to Jack. As Jack read through it, he began to realize that the letter was a personal message, revealing something Lena had never known about herself. The letter spoke of a secret one that had been hidden from Lena for her entire life. She was not just the descendant of a noble family, as Jack had previously discovered. No, there was more. According to the letter, Lena was the heir to an ancient and powerful bloodline, one that had been lost to time. Her family had once ruled over vast stretches of the galaxy, commanding respect and admiration from all who knew them. But that was not the most surprising part. The letter revealed that Lena had a unique gift hand, ancient power that ran through her veins, something that had been dormant for generations. This power was linked to the stars themselves, a force that could reshape the balance of power in the galaxy. The letter mentioned that, for her safety, Lena's bloodline had been kept a secret. Her true heritage had been hidden, and her powers were suppressed by those who had enslaved her. Jack couldn't believe what he was reading. It felt like the entire galaxy had kept a secret from her own bloodline, her destiny. He felt a surge of urgency. This was why Lena had been treated the way she had. This was why she had been enslaved. He sat back in his chair, his heart racing. He didn't know what to do with this newfound information. It was a lot to take in, and he wasn't sure how to break it to Lena. He couldn't just tell her she was the heir to an ancient and powerful family. It would shatter everything she had come to believe about herself. Later that evening, Jack sat down with Lena in the quiet sitting room. The atmosphere between them had changed. There was no more tension, no more silence. It was comfortable. Like two people who had finally found common ground, Jack began. I found something today, something important. Lena looked up from the book she had been reading, her curiosity piqued. What is it? Jack hesitated for a moment, unsure of how to begin. I found some old records, he said, and they mention your family. Lena frowned slightly. What? Family, but I told you, they're all gone. I don't have a family. Jack leaned forward, placing the datapad between them on the table. That's not true, he said softly. Your family didn't just disappear. They were powerful, Lena. And you, your heir. Lena's eyes widened. What do you mean? I don't understand. Jack took a deep breath. Lena, you come from a long line of rulers. Your family once controlled vast parts of the galaxy. They were respected, feared even. And you're the last of your bloodline. You have a power inside you, a gift that can change the galaxy. Lena's face went pale. No, she whispered, shaking her head. That can't be true. I'm just just a slave. Jack placed a hand gently on hers, willing her to look at him. No, Lena, you are so much more than that. You're the heir to something great. You have the power to lead, to change everything. Lena looked at him, her mind racing with 1,000 thoughts. She had always believed she was nothing. She had been told she was nothing, treated like nothing. And now Jack was telling her that she was the heir to a powerful family with the ability to reshape the galaxy. It was too much. It's too much for her to understand all at once. I don't know what to do with this, Lena said, her voice shaky. I've been told who I am my whole life. Now you're telling me I'm someone else? Jack nodded. You don't have to make any decisions right now. I just wanted you to know. You deserve to know the truth. Lena sat in silence for a long time, staring at the datapad in front of her. Her mind was spinning. She had never imagined that her life could be more than what it had been. She had never considered that she could be someone important, someone who mattered. She had been so focused on surviving, on getting through each day, that the thought of having a future, a purpose, never crossed her mind. Jack could see the struggle in her eyes, the conflict between the life she had known and the one that was now being presented to her. He wanted to help her, to guide her, but he knew that the decision had to be hers. He couldn't force her to accept this new identity, this new legacy. She had to choose it for herself. Lena, Jack said softly, whatever you decide, I'm here. You don't have to do this alone. Lena looked up at him, her eyes filled with uncertainty. But there was something else in them, too. Something that hadn't been there before. It was a flicker of hope, a small spark of possibility. For the first time, Lena allowed herself to believe that she could be something more than a slave. That maybe, just maybe, she had a purpose in this galaxy after all. The days following the revelation of Lena's true heritage were filled with uncertainty. Lena struggled with the truth, torn between the life she had known and the future Jack had shown her. The knowledge that she was the heir to an ancient bloodline, a lineage with great power, was overwhelming. She had spent years being nothing, more than a servant, a slave. How could she suddenly step into a role as important as the ruler of a vast forgotten empire? Jack, understanding the weight of her confusion, gave her space. He knew she needed time to process everything. But as the days passed, the urgency of the situation began to grow. Jack couldn't shake the feeling that there were others out there who knew about Lena's legacy. People who would stop at nothing to take control of her and the power that ran through her veins. One evening, as Jack sat alone in the study, reading through more of the documents Lena's former owner had left behind, he heard the sound of footsteps behind him. He turned to find Lena standing in the doorway, her expression unreadable. I've been thinking, Lena said quietly. I can't just hide here forever. If what you say is true, then I have a responsibility to my family, to the galaxy. I can't ignore it anymore. Jack stood up, a sense of relief washing over him. Lena, you don't have to decide anything right now. You have time. You can take. It's slow. Lena shook her head. I've already wasted enough time. It's not just about me anymore. I have a chance to do something, to change things. I have to try. Jack nodded slowly. He had known from the start that Lena had strength within her, even if she hadn't seen it yet. And now, it seemed that strength was beginning to surface. We need to move quickly, Jack said, his voice serious. What? There are people out there who know about your family, about your power. They won't let you go freely. We'll need help. Lena's eyes narrowed. Help? Who can we trust? I don't even know who I am anymore, let alone who I can trust. Jack thought for a moment, then nodded. There's a man. His name is Tehran. He's a former ally of your family. He's one of the few who knows about your heritage and could help us navigate what's coming. Lena was quiet for a long time, her eyes distant as she considered Jack's words. Finally, she spoke. And how do we find him? Jack sighed. That's the tricky part. He's in hiding, but I know someone who can get us to him. A friend of mine, Vera, who works with a network of mercenaries and spies. She can get us the information we need. Lena looked at Jack, uncertainty still in her eyes, but there was a new resolve in her voice. Then let's find him. The decision was made. They would seek out Tehran, the only person who could help them understand the power Lena held, and how to protect it. But Jack knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. They would have to navigate a galaxy still reeling from the war, where dangerous factions were vying for control. And if they weren't careful, Lena's bloodline could become a weapon for those who sought to use it for their own gain. The next morning, Jack and Lena set out to meet Vera, the mercenary who might hold the key to finding Tehran. They traveled to a small, hidden settlement on the outskirts of the galaxy. It was a place where only the brave or the desperate came to do business. The air was thick with the smell of fuel and metal, and the streets were lined with shady characters. Jack led Lena through the narrow, dimly lit alleyways until they reached a small bar at the end of the street. Inside, the atmosphere was tense, filled with the low hum of conversation and the clink of glasses. At the far end of the room sat a woman with short black hair and a scar running down her cheek. She was clearly waiting for them. Vera, Jack asked, walking up to the table. The woman looked up, her expression cold but calculating. Jack, she said, standing up. You've brought the princess with you, I see. Lena stiffened at the mention of her new title, but she said nothing. She wasn't sure how to feel about being called the princess of a lost empire. It was all still too much to grasp. We need information on Tehran, Jack said, cutting to the point. We need to find him. Vera's eyes flicked to Lena, and Jack saw a flash of recognition in her gaze. You're sure you want to go down this path? Vera asked. There are people out there who would kill to get their hands on you, Lena. It's not just about your family's legacy anymore. It's about your life. Lena swallowed, her voice barely above a whisper. I'm ready. I have to do this. I can't hide anymore. Vera nodded slowly. All right. I can get you the information, but it won't be easy. You'll need to be prepared. There are things out there, things you don't even know about, that will stop at nothing to control you. Jack placed a hand on Lena's shoulder, offering her silent support. He could see the fear in her eyes, but he also saw something else, courage. She was no longer just a slave, she was someone with a future. And Jack would help her fight for it, no matter what. Do what you can, Jack said to Vera. We're ready for whatever comes next. Vera gave a sharp nod. You're going to need it. I'll make the arrangements, but be prepared to move quickly. Once the word gets out that you're alive, there's no going back. As Jack and Lena left the bar, the weight of what lay ahead pressed down on them, but they were no longer facing it alone. Together, they would find Tehran and uncover the truth about Lena's legacy. And whatever dangers lay ahead, they would face them side by side. The journey had not been easy. Jack and Lena, along with Vera, had spent days traveling through remote regions of the galaxy, gathering information and preparing for their next steps. They had learned that Turan, the only person who could help them understand Lena's legacy, was hiding on a distant world, a place where few dared to venture. Jack's nerves were on edge, but he knew they had no other choice. They had to find Turan, and fast. The galaxy was still reeling from the aftermath of the war. New alliances were forming, but old enemies were also rising from the ashes.
I knew that.
Factions that had once fought in the war were not content with simply fading into the background. Many of them were now seeking power, hoping to fill the vacuum left by the conflict. Jack had a feeling that Lena's bloodline, her unique power, would soon become the center of a new battle, as they approached the remote planet where Turan was said to be hiding. Vera looked at Jack and Lena with a serious expression. "You need to be ready," she said, her voice low. "There are forces out there that won't just let you walk in and meet him. You've been marked." Lena frowned, her anxiety growing. Marked. Vera's gaze was steady. "By those who know about you. They want your power, Lena. They know what you're capable of, even if you don't fully understand it yourself." Clenched his fists. "So what do we do now?" "We move carefully," Vera replied. "I've made some arrangements for us to meet Turan, but we can't afford to be careless. If the wrong people find out where we're going, it'll be over before it even starts." The tension between them grew as the ship descended into the atmosphere of the planet. The landscape below was rugged and uninhabited. It's a perfect hiding spot for someone like Turan. As they landed, Jack's eyes scanned the horizon, his senses alert for any sign of danger. He could feel it in the air, the weight of something dark, something lurking just out of sight. The landing site was quiet, too quiet. Vera led the way, with Jack and Lena following CLOs behind. The wind howled through the barren landscape, but there was no sign of life, no signs of civilization. It was exactly what they had expected, and yet Jack couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into a trap. "We're almost there," Vera said, her voice steady. "Turan should be just beyond that ridge." As they made their way across the rocky terrain, Jack noticed a strange silence settling over them. The usual sounds of wildlife, the rustle of leaves, or the hum of distant machinery were absent. It felt as though they were being watched suddenly. The silence was broken by a sharp crackle from the communication device in Jack's hand. His heart skipped a beat as he listened to the distorted voice on the other end. "Turn back now." The voice was unmistakable. It was the voice of someone Jack had hoped never to hear again. "That's impossible," Jack muttered under his breath. Lena's eyes widened, fear flashing across her face. "Who is it?" Jack looked at her, his jaw clenched. "It's Commander Vares, a former military officer from the war. He's the one who led the attack on your family. He was in charge of the forces that kept you imprisoned." Lena took a step back, her breath quickening. "Why is he after me? What does he want?" Jack's mind raced. He knew Vares was dangerous. He had been ruthless in the past, with no regard for life or loyalty, but this was different. Vares wasn't just after Lena for revenge. He wanted the power she possessed. "I think we've been followed," Jack said. "Vares knows where we're going. He's trying to stop us from meeting Turan. We have to hurry." Without warning, a loud explosion shook the ground beneath them. The shockwave sent them all sprawling to the ground. Jack's heart raced as he looked around, trying to make sense of what was happening. More explosions followed, each one closer. Then the last, they were under attack. "Move," Vera shouted, pulling Jack and Lena to their feet. "We need to get to cover now." They scrambled to the nearby rocks, seeking shelter as the explosions continued to shake the planet's surface. Jack could hear the faint sound of approaching engines, the hum of ships in the distance. Varys' forces were closing in, and they had no time to waste. "We're not going to make it to Turan if we don't get moving," Varys said, her voice tight. "With urgency, we need to fight back or find a way to escape." Lena looked at Jack, fear evident in her eyes. "What do we do? How do we fight them? I'm not ready for this." Jack placed a hand on her shoulder, his voice firm but gentle. "You don't have to do this alone. We'll protect you, Lena, but we need to move quickly." "Trust me," Lena nodded, her face pale but determined. Jack could see the fear in her eyes, But there was something else there now, a spark of courage. She was beginning to realize the power she held within herself. It wasn't just a gift, it was a responsibility. The explosion stopped, but the air was thick with tension. Jack knew that the battle was far from over. Varys's forces were closing in, and they would stop at nothing to take Lena and her power. Jack had always been a soldier, but this was different. This wasn't just a fight for survival. It was a fight to protect something greater. Something that could change the galaxy. "You have to take the fight to them," Jack said, his voice low and steady. "We need to find Turan. He's the key to everything. And we're not going to let Varys stop us." Vera nodded, her face hardening with resolve. "Let's move. The longer we wait, the more dangerous this becomes." With that, they made their way through the rugged landscape, prepared for whatever came next. Jack knew that they were up against powerful enemies, but for the first time in a long time, he felt a sense of purpose. They had to protect Lena not just for her future, but for the future of the galaxy itself. The planet was alive with chaos. Explosions had torn through the quiet of the rocky landscape, and the one-scum air was now filled with the roar of approaching engines and the sound of distant blaster fire. Jack, Lena, and Vera moved quickly, their eyes constantly scanning the surroundings, looking for any sign of the forces closing in on them. It was clear that the fight was not over. In fact, it was only just beginning. Jack pulled Lena closer, making sure she stayed behind cover as they advanced. The enemy forces were relentless. Varys, the commander who had once hunted Lena's family, was no doubt leading the attack. His forces were well-trained, and they would stop at nothing to capture Lena and use her bloodline's power for their own gain. Jack could feel the weight of the situation pressing down on him. This was no longer just about surviving the attack. This was about protecting Lena's future. They had come so far, and Jack wasn't about to let Varys take that from them. "Stay close," Jack said, glancing over at Vera, who was crouched beside him, her eyes scanning the horizon. Vera nodded.
"What?"
"We've got to reach the base before they do. Turan is our only chance." Lena, though still clearly shaken, seemed more determined than ever. She had gone from a woman broken by the weight of her past to someone ready to face whatever came next. Jack saw the change in her every day. She had begun to realize that she wasn't just an heir to a powerful family. She was the key to the galaxy's future. They kept moving through the jagged terrain, Vera leading the way as Jack kept a protective hand on Lena. The sounds of battle grew louder, and Jack could feel the tension in the air. Every step took them closer to Turan, the one man who could help them understand Lena's powers. But with Varys's forces closing in, time was running out. "How far are we from the base?" Jack asked, his voice tight with urgency. Vera glanced at him. "Not far. We're almost there. We just need to keep moving." Right. Lena looked around, her eyes full of concern. "What if we don't make it? What if they get to us first?" Jack stopped for a moment and turned to face her. "We will make it," he said firmly. "We're not giving up. You have a purpose now, Lena. You have a future. We're going to fight for it." For a moment, Lena looked uncertain, but then something shifted in her eyes. She wasn't just afraid anymore. She wasn't just hiding from her past. She was looking forward, facing the challenges ahead with the same determination Jack had seen in soldiers who had been through the worst of battles. "Let's go," Lena said, her voice strong now. "We can't let them win." With renewed resolve, they moved forward, nearing the entrance to the hidden base where Turan was said to be waiting. But just as they reached the final ridge, the unmistakable sound of engines revving and footsteps crunching against the rocky ground reached their ears. Jack looked over at Vera, who had already drawn her blaster, her face hard with determination. "They're here," Vera muttered. "We have to make it inside now." Without another word, they sprinted toward the base. Jack could hear the pounding of boots behind them, the sounds of Varys's men getting closer. But they didn't stop. Not now. Not when they were so close. The entrance to the base came into view, a small, hidden door built into the side of a cliff. Jack reached for the control panel, his fingers flying over the keypad. It was locked, but Vera had expected that. She quickly hacked into the system, and within seconds, the door slid open. "Go!" Vera shouted. They rushed inside, the door closing behind them with a soft hiss. Jack turned to see the dimly lit interior of the base. The walls were lined with old technology and scattered equipment. It was clear that Turan had been hiding here for some time. They made their way deeper into the base, and after a few turns, they found him, Turan, a tall, posing figure with sharp features and eyes that seemed to pierce through the darkness. He looked at them, his face unreadable. "You've come," Turan said, his voice low but steady. "I didn't expect you to make it this far." Jack stepped forward. "We need your help. You're the only one who can teach Lena about her legacy, about her power." Turan studied Lena carefully, his eyes scanning her with a mixture of curiosity and caution. "I see," he said after a moment. "So, it's true. You are the last of the old bloodline." Lena stood tall, though she was still unsure of herself. "What does that mean? What am I supposed to do now?" Turan sighed deeply, his face filled with both regret and respect. "Your family's bloodline holds great power that can shape the future of the galaxy. But it is a dangerous power, and it comes with a choice." Lena stepped closer, her voice barely above a whisper. "What kind of choice?" Turan's gaze softened as he looked at her. "You must decide whether to embrace your heritage and use your power for good, or to let it be consumed by those who would use it for their own gain. There are many who would seek to control you, but it is your choice, Lena. The power lies within you." Lena looked at Jack, who stood beside her, offering her silent support. She'd already come so far, but now she had to make the most important decision of her life. The future of the galaxy might depend on her choice. Jack gave her a small, reassuring smile. "You don't have to decide right now. But whatever you choose, I'll be with you. We'll face it together." Lena turned back to Turan, her voice steady now. "I don't want to run from this anymore. I want to fight. I want to make a difference." Turan nodded, a glint of approval in his eyes. "Then let us begin. Together, we will prepare for the challenges ahead. Your journey has only just begun, but you're no longer alone." And so Lena took her first steps toward embracing her destiny. With Jack by her side and Turan's guidance, she was ready to face whatever challenges the galaxy had in store. For her, she was no longer just a woman broken by her past. She was the future of the galaxy, and she would fight for it.